Hello and welcome to this overview on the PriceLink SmallWorks module. The SmallWorks module can be used for day work control, reactive maintenance or any type of small job. We're currently on the opening form of the program where we can select and open up existing jobs. What we're going to do in this overview is start at the beginning with a new job, work our way through adding materials, labour and then totaling it up and running a report. So if I select the new tab, we've got our fields that we can enter any detail against if we wish. So I'll put a little bit of detail in there. I'll select a client first of all. Okay, so you notice when I enter the client, a couple of the fields are also filled out for us. The contract plan, the response priority, and based on that priority, the start and required date of the job. It's added these fields in here because we have attached a contract plan to this particular client. Contract plans can be attached to any clients or indeed to different sites. So you could have different contract plans for different sites. As well as the details you see in front of us here, each contract plan also has a separate default labour rate and material and labour markup rate. Obviously they're only defaults, so they can be updated when we get to the total screen if we want to change them. Similarly, the contract plan itself can be changed at this stage if we wanted to change it for a different plan. You can set the plans up however you want. So I'll add a site in as well, and I'll just fill in a couple of the fields like the job type, and I'll just make this one a SmallWorks. The contract plans, the job types, these all descriptions that you can be set up by yourself. I'll set a lead engineer. These can be fairly generic descriptions just for a skill type or individual employees. If we set a lead engineer at this stage, it just sets it up on the job for us to save us having to look them up later. And I'll just pop the status in there as pending. So we've got 7 days to do it. If I wish, I could add some notes to the job here. If I'm happy with that, I can just click new and that will raise the job and take us into our materials tab where we can add materials. So with the materials form here, the top half of the form is our worksheet and the bottom half of the form is our database. The number of ways we can add products. We can either, if we know the catalog code, we can simply enter the code there and then pick it off. If we don't know the code but we know the manufacturer, we can enter the manufacturing range there. Or if we don't have a particular manufacturer in mind but we know a product group that we'd like to look up, we can use that. Or if we don't know any of those, we can just use a description. It will do a product description search across the product database. I'll just quickly show you a couple of these. So if I want an MK item, I can select MK. Obviously a lot of items within the MK range, so I might want to narrow that down to say Logic Plus. So there's our Logic Plus items. Now, as I mentioned, the product option is another way of finding items. We can either use this by itself so that we don't limit it to a manufacturer range, or we can use it with a manufacturer range. And I'll use it with this manufacturer range we have here just to show that we can narrow things down a little further. So if I go for wiring accessories there and then select sockets, you can see we've now got our MK logic sockets. I'll just pick one of those up, and all we need to do is enter a quantity, and then we can just add that to the job if we want. If we wish, we can update the discounts and material group of the fields. The material groups, they just allow you to set the materials from your database into as many different groups as you want, and each group can have its own uplift amounts, which that allows you to apply different markup to, say, lighting than you would to something like cables. So if I'm happy with that, I can click OK, and that will drop it on the job. And another way of selecting items for the job are to use assemblies or kits. So if I just select this 6-gang grid here, this is a grid switch which we've already made up. So we've got the front plate, the box, couple of frames, and a few different types of switches in there. And if we're happy with all that, we can update the quantity if we want more than one, or just click insert and it will add all of the items together, which is obviously a lot faster than entering individual items. Another type of assembly is more of a, if you like, a just-in-time assembly, where you may not know exactly what you want until you get to this stage. So what we have here is, again, the same grid switch, but with a few more items in here, with all the quantities set to 0. Items which have quantities in them are ones we're always going to use on it, such as the front plate, the box, and the frames. And then all we need to do is select what we're after. So if we wanted, say, an indicator and 5 of those switches, then we can just set those, and then if we click insert this time, what it will now do is add everything which we has a quantity applied to it, but it won't enter any of the items where the quantities are 0. So that's what I mean by just-in-time type assembly. A third type of assembly we have is a linear one. So in this trunking run here, which has some cabling and mini trunking, if we take a look at it, you can see here we've got a meter of cable there, and what we're saying is for every meter of cable, assuming this mini trunking comes in 3-meter lengths as it does, we want a third of a length of the trunking and a third of a coupler, and we'll pick up a few fixings while we're about it. And then all we need to do is to put in the quantity we want, click the insert, and it multiplies all the quantities up for us. You notice with something like the coupler, it knows that you can't get a part of a coupler, so rounds it up if necessary. So a few different ways of selecting the items. If we run across a situation, and we will, when there are items we need to add to the costing which aren't on the database, then it's very simple to add your own. All we need to do is select new part, and then if we want to add it to the database as well, that means we would use it in the future as well as adding it to the costing at this stage. If we want to do that, then we would give it an item code, and we'd also select add to database. If we don't select add to database, it will just add it to the takeoff sheet now and will not put in a database. So if I just give it a description, well, in my demo item, and I'll just put a price in there, and that will do for now. I can update other details if I want. So if I add that, then it's added, you can see there, 12 of those to the job. And if I go back to our search and just type in demo there, you can see there's our item there in the database as well. So it's very simple to add items to the database if you need items which aren't in there. You might want to build up your own complete ranges. I showed you some kits or assemblies a moment ago. They are extremely simple to build. I'll just quickly knock one up to show you how we do it. We just select new kit, give it a name. I'll call this demo kit. It's asking for a quantity. Well, that's how many kits you want to add now. So I'm going to say I want to add 12 of these kits. And then all I do is click OK. And then anything I add now will be added both to our costing sheet and to the kit. When we finish building the kit, all we need to do is click the End Kit Build button there. So I'll just grab a couple of items just to show you the principle. So if I just grab a switch socket there and a back box. Okay, and then I click the End Build, and that has built our assembly and added it to the costing sheet there. And just to show you it has, there's our demo kit there with the items we've just put in. So extremely simple to build up your kits and assemblies. If we want to edit an item, then all we need to do is to double click on it, and then we can edit the quantity, description, prices, discounts, etc., or even the material group. The other thing we might want to do is we've got a Save As button here. If we have costed a previous job and we have a new one coming that's very similar, rather than rebuild the whole job, what we can do is open up the job and then click Save As, give it a new code, and then just edit it however we want. So we got an opportunity there to clone an existing job. If I move on to the labour, okay, we put Fred in as our lead engineer, and we're working on a contract rate here. So we had that attached to the client. But if we don't want to use a contract rate, we can use any of our standard rates. I'll show you those in a second. So all we need to do is either put in the start time, which will log the exact details for us, or we could have just put in the hours if we didn't want to be so specific. So that's just rounded up the hours for us. Now if I click Insert, that will add it to the job there. So we've got a total of £154, which is 5 hours labour at £30.80 an hour. And as I say, that particular rate came from the contract rate, which was a 7-day standard contract. The skill types, as you can see, we've got a number of different skill types here. They all come from our labour database where we can build them up. There's a complete video on this if you want to have a look at it, so I won't spend too much time on it, but just to show you, we can set up as many different rates as we want, and then against each rate, or against each skill type I should say, we can set up to 5 different rate descriptions with 5 different rate costs. And then we can put in things like how many hours a day they normally work, how many days a week they normally work. Percent of productivity, that's not used in SmallWorks, but this form is shared with the contract estimating and it is used in there. And then we also have, if we want to use some GIB type travel allowance costs and travel payment time costs for the various distances, which we can use either here or in the contract estimating. I didn't add any travel costs in here. If we wanted to add some travel costs and build them into our labour rate, then we would do it on this form. And what we would do is when we add our labour in, before we click the insert, we would either just put in the distance to the site and then it would use the GIB type rates, or the other option is to just put the distance to the site with whatever mileage rate you tend to charge, and that will calculate the travel cost based on that basis. And the cost it comes up with, it will amalgamate into the labour cost, or the labour rate there I should say. If it does that, then it won't show the travel cost separately on your quotation report. If you did want to show travel costs separately on the quote report, and instead of adding them on this screen, on our labour screen, we would go to the travel tab there, where we can give it a description, a rate, distance. It will calculate the cost for us. If it is entered on this form, then it will be shown separately on the quotation, but if it's entered in the labour, then it won't be shown separately. We can add more labour here if we want. So if I wanted to say Barney is there with him, then I can edit the times and everything if I wish, or I can just click insert to add Barney on. Barney on with Fred there, and then we've got a total of 10 hours, and the average rate now is £29.40 because Barney's paid a little less. If we wish, we can also add expenses. Now, expenses can be whatever you want, and you can either display them on the quote report, or you can distribute them across either the material, the labour, or both, in which case they won't be displayed on the quotation cost. And the way we do that is we just put a description in there, just share this works. So I've got some plant in there, and if I want to put a cost in there, I can. Then when we have distributed, if I want, I can put an N in for non-distributed, and if it doesn't distribute them, then it will show these costs on the quotation to your customer. But if we don't want to display them, we want to spread them across the rates, we've got a couple of options. We can say spread them across material and labour, spread them across just the material, or spread them just across labour. Well, as it's planned, I'm going to spread this just across the labour rates. So we can just add as many expenses in there as we want. Okay, travel, as I said, if we want to add in some travel, we can. And if we do that, we just give it a description. So I just put in travel, and if I put in my rate, say 45p a mile, 25 miles, and that will calculate the cost for us. So when I go to our totals form now, we can now add our markup. So starting at the top here, we have our labour. We've got the total hours, the average rate, the cost. I've not put any markup in there yet, which I will do in a second. Our profit amount and the selling price. Below that, we then have our different groups of materials depending on how many you've set up and used. So we've got general materials and we've got trunking. Those are the only two groups we're showing on this particular job. So we can have different markups for those different groups. There's our expenses there, £150, and there's our travel costs there, giving us our subtotal and our average markup across the job, profit, selling price. And then if we want, we can have an additional markup across the whole of the job to go across all the different elements. And then we have one other field here, which allows us to put an ad hoc description and an amount in. That can be quite useful if you've got a very simple job where you want to keep the job on the system, but you don't want to spend time entering material or labour costs. You just want to put out a quote with a description and a price. Then you can skip everything we've done so far, just raise a new job, come to this form, enter the description, enter the cost, and go to your quote report and send it off. So, number of ways of setting the cost. If we want, we can just set a figure here, and it will work the percentages back for us. We can set an overall markup there, and that will work it across all the different elements, or we can do it individually. So I'll just do this individually just to show you how it works. So if I put in 50% markup, okay, we got 50% markup there. Then we've got 25% on general materials, and if I wanted to put something different on, say, the trunking and the conduit, I can either enter a markup percentage there, or the other alternative is just to say, well, actually, I want £180 profit on that conduit, and it'll work the percentage back for us. So different ways of applying your markups. It's fairly flexible. And then once we've done that, we can go to our report screen, and if I select quote, it will run off a quote report for us. But first of all, it's just asking us for some text. So I can enter some text in here if I want, or just to show how it works, we can also preset text with headers. And if I select a header here, so I'll just select emergency lighting 3-month test, it will put all the text in for us. So again, you can set as many of those up as you want just to save on the typing. If I just click OK now, it will run the report for us. So here's our quotation report to the Bedrock County Council as our descriptive text, and then the material cost, the labour cost. There's our travel cost there, because I'd entered it on the travel tab, so it displays it. It's not showing you, notice, the expenses, and that's because I distributed those over the labour element, so the cost of that plant is buried in the labour there. And that gives us a subtotal, that and the overall total there. So that's a very brief overview of the SmallWorks module from PriceLinks. If you'd like any more information, then please go to our site and take a look. There are also more in-depth videos on various areas of the program. Thank you very much for your time.